What you should know. What do you mean by healthy foods? Differences. Is it wise to stay away from highly processed foods? In conclusion, you've definitely heard that in order to live your healthiest life, you should limit your intake of highly processed foods. While this is true, many people are perplexed as to what constitutes a highly processed meal or beverage, and why consuming too many of these foods can cause difficulties. This article describes the distinctions between healthy foods and highly processed foods, as well as why highly processed foods should be consumed only on occasion. What do you mean by highly processed foods? Almost all foods have been processed in some way. Manufacturers, for example, treat dry beans to make them shelf-stable. This does not imply that they are unhealthy. Researchers have divided meals into 4 groups based on the degree of processing to make it easier to grasp. So, before we go into what defines a food highly processed, it's crucial to note that foods aren't necessarily unhealthy just because they've been processed. Researchers have divided meals into 4 groups based on the degree of processing to make it easier to grasp. They did it by employing NOVA, a food classification system created by academics at the University of São Paulo in Brazil. NOVA Group 1. Minimally processed and unprocessed foods. Vegetables, fruits, grains, beans, and nuts fall into this category. These foods may have gone through roasting, boiling, or pasteurization to increase shelf life or make them safe to eat. NOVA Group 2. Processed culinary ingredients obtained directly from Group 1 foods or from nature. This can include foods such as olive oil, maple syrup, and salt. Group 2 foods are mainly used in preparation and cooking of Group 1 foods. NOVA Group 3. Processed foods, including items made by adding ingredients like salt, sugar, or other substances from Group 2 to Group 1 foods. Examples include fresh bread, fruits and syrup, and cheese. NOVA Group 4. Ultra-processed foods. These contain little, if any, of the foods or ingredients from Group 1. These items are meant to be convenient, hyper-palatable, and low-cost and are typically high in sugars, refined grains, fats, preservatives, and salt. Ultra-processed, or highly processed, foods typically contain substances you wouldn't use in food preparation at home, such as, for trusted source, hydrolyzed proteins, modified starches, hydrogenated oils, colorants, flavorings, high fructose corn syrup, artificial sweeteners, bulking agents. These definitions aren't perfect or 100% accurate for classifying foods, and experts admit that there's considerable variability when it comes to listing foods as highly processed in research studies. For example, breakfast cereals are considered highly processed in many studies. However, healthcare experts do not consider some cereals highly processed if they contain no added sugar and have undergone minimal processing. That said, this classification system is simply meant to provide a general idea of what makes a food highly processed based on its manufacturing and ingredients. Examples of highly processed foods. Now that you have a general idea of what makes a food highly processed, you're probably wondering which foods and beverages fall into this category. Here are some common examples of ultra-processed foods, to trusted source. Sugary beverages such as carbonated soft drinks, sugary coffee drinks, energy drinks, and fruit punch. Sweet or savory packaged snacks such as chips and cookies. Sweetened breakfast cereals such as Fruit Loops, Trix, Cinnamon Toast Crunch, and sweetened oatmeals. Baking mixes such as stuffing, cake, brownie, and cookie mixes. Reconstituted meat products such as hot dogs and fish sticks. Frozen meals, such as pizza and TV dinners. Powdered and packaged instant soups. Candies and other confectionery. Packaged breads and buns. Energy and protein bars and shakes. Meal replacement shakes and powders meant for weight loss. Boxed pasta products. Ice cream, sweetened yogurt, and cocoa mixes. Margarine and other ultra-processed spreads such as sweetened cream cheese. Keep in mind that this list is not exhaustive. Many other foods and ingredients are also considered ultra-processed. It's not always immediately clear whether a food is highly processed, which could make it difficult for consumers to minimize these products in their diet. Many other foods and ingredients are also considered ultra-processed. The most reliable way to identify highly processed foods is to read the ingredient labels. Ultra-processed foods have ingredients like artificial colorings and flavorings, thickeners and preservatives, hydrolyzed proteins, sweeteners such as fructose, high fructose corn syrup, invert sugar, and maltodextrin hydrogenated or intensified oils, bulking, foaming, and gelling agents, flavor enhancers such as monosodium glutamate. The world of food additives can be overwhelming and confusing, and you might find it difficult to identify everything on ingredient lists. If you're interested in learning more about food additives and which additives manufacturers commonly include in ultra-processed foods, check out the United Nations Codex Alimentarius, which keeps an updated list of food additives. Summary: highly processed, or ultra-processed, foods contain few or no minimally processed or unprocessed ingredients and tend to be higher in calories, salt, fat, and added sugars. Plus, they contain additives such as flavor enhancers and thickeners. What are considered healthy foods? In general, fresh vegetables, fruits, pasteurized milk, chicken, fish, beans, and eggs are considered unprocessed or minimally processed, to trusted source. This is because these foods go through no or minimal processing before you buy them or harvest them yourself. We commonly refer to these foods as whole foods because they are in their original, whole form or very close to it. Here are some examples of healthy, whole foods. Vegetables and fruits, including fresh, frozen, or unsweetened dried produced grains such as brown rice, quinoa, and buckwheat. Legumes such as beans and lentils, starchy root vegetables, such as potatoes, cassava, and sweet potatoes, meat, poultry, eggs, and fish, fresh or pasteurized milk and plain yogurt, 100% fruit or vegetable juice, herbs and spices. Tea and coffee, nuts and seeds, items made from whole foods, such as granola made with oats, dried fruit, and no added sugar, or polenta made with whole cornmeal, are also considered minimally processed and therefore healthy. Additionally, some oils, such as olive oil and avocado oil, are derived from whole foods and are considered a healthy choice. Using the term healthy can be problematic at times because it can demonize foods that are considered processed. That's why, rather than use the word healthy to describe a food, it's better to use the term nutrient dense. This refers to foods that pack a lot of nutrients per gram. In general, minimally processed and unprocessed foods are much more nutrient dense than ultra-processed foods. It just means that most of your diet should be composed of whole, nutrient-dense foods. For example, a homemade soup made with chicken, vegetables, brown rice, and broth is likely much more nutritious than a highly processed canned or boxed soup mix. However, this doesn't mean you have to completely avoid processed and highly processed foods. It just means that most of your diet should be composed of whole, nutrient-dense foods. Summary: whole, nutrient-dense foods are unprocessed or minimally processed. Fruits, vegetables, nuts, beans, fish, and eggs are just a few examples. Main differences. There are several differences between minimally processed foods and highly processed foods. Here are some of the main ones. Calories. In general, ultra-processed foods tend to be much higher in calories than whole, minimally processed foods. For example, a 100-gram serving of potato chips contains 545 calories, while the same size serving of a plain baked potato contains only 95 calories. This is because of the processing potato chips undergo, including frying, 6 trusted source, 7 trusted source. However, this isn't always the case. Some highly processed foods, such as those produced by companies marketing to people who want to lose weight, may be low in calories. But this doesn't automatically make them a healthy choice. When you're assessing whether a food is healthy, consider its entire nutritional value, not just its calorie count. Sugar content. Sweet ultra-processed foods tend to be high in added sugars. Ultra-processed foods such as sweetened breakfast cereals, packaged baked goods, and sweetened beverages are designed to be hyper-palatable. Manufacturers achieve this by adding sweeteners such as cane sugar, invert syrup, and high-fructose corn syrup. Unfortunately, many highly processed, sweetened products are marketed toward children and adolescents. For example, Captain Crunch's Crunch Berries, a popular cereal among children, contains a whopping 16 grams of added sugar per 1 cup, 37-gram, serving. This equates to around 4 teaspoons of added sugar, 8. In contrast, a breakfast of cooked rolled oats with fresh berries and natural peanut butter contains 0 grams of added sugar and is a much more nutritious choice for adults or growing children. Likewise, energy drinks, fruit punch, and soda, which are popular among children and adults alike, can contain a shocking amount of sugar. An 8.4-ounce, 248 milliliter, can of the energy drink Red Bull contains 26.6 grams, or 6.24 teaspoons, of sugar. Other differences. Ultra-processed foods are commonly lower in fiber, protein, vitamins, and minerals and higher in salt and fat than whole, nutritious foods. However, again, this isn't always the case. Some ultra-processed foods and drinks can contain added fibers and protein concentrates, which increase the product's content of these nutrients. For example, weight loss meal replacement bars and energy bars can be very high in protein and fiber. Additionally, some highly processed foods marketed as diet, light, or low fat can be very low in fat, but this doesn't necessarily mean these products are healthy. When food manufacturers remove fat from a product, they commonly add sugar to improve the taste. Plus, many ultra-processed foods, such as diet protein bars and snacks, are high in additives such as artificial sweeteners, colors, flavors, thickeners, and more. Summary: ultra-processed foods tend to be higher in calories, added sugar, and salt. Plus, they commonly contain ingredients such as flavor enhancers, preservatives, and artificial colors and flavors.